The closing bell bringing an end to another lackluster day for stocks. The Dow, S&P 500, and the Nasdaq all down, ending the worst week this month for all three major indices. The uninspired results on Wall Street today, a result of President Trump injecting a new wrinkle into his global trade war. Within the past hour, the president in the Oval Office saying this.
I'm not looking for a deal. I mean, we've set the deal. It's at 50%. But again, there is no tariff if they build their plant here. Now, if somebody comes in and wants to build a plant here, I can talk to them about a little bit of a delay.
Not looking for a deal. Those comments coming just a few hours after he posted that the European Union has been, quote, very difficult to deal with, and adding that he's, quote, recommending a 50% tariff on all imports from the EU starting June 1st. Now, Europe isn't alone in these new threats. The president today also putting Apple and other smartphone makers on notice, demanding the company make iPhones in the U.S. or face a 25% tariff. An administration official tells CNN that Apple CEO Tim Cook met with the president at the White House this past Tuesday, though the official didn't say what the two talked about. On an earnings call earlier this month, Cook told investors that he expected Apple would face a tariff burden of nearly $1 billion just this quarter, billion with a B. Later, during remarks in the Oval Office, Trump expanded his threat to include Samsung and anybody making smartphones outside the United States. Let's discuss with former Treasury Secretary and former president of Harvard, Larry Summers. Larry, great to see you. So Trump also just announced a partnership between U.S. Steel and Japanese steelmaker Nippon that he says will keep the headquarters of U.S. Steel in Pittsburgh and draw $14 billion of investment toward the U.S. economy. He said this as he was boarding Marine One. He's headed to Bedminster for the weekend. I wonder what your reaction is to that news.
I don't know the details well enough to comment. I guess it's good that some arrangement has been made. That merger was obviously a good thing for the U.S. economy and had been blocked by the Biden administration and then had been blocked by the Trump administration. So the idea that something's being worked out is, I suppose, good. But I find the whole approach of constantly moving goalposts, deal making with individual companies based on the president's personal loyalties that he's taking to economic policy to be disastrous. And I think ultimately it's going to have very bad consequences for our economy.
I wonder, Larry, how you read his statements today. I mean, he started off by saying that he's recommending 50% tariffs on the EU, then later said, we already set a deal, it's at 50%. How do you think the U.S. is, the EU is absorbing those statements?
Look, I think the president of the United States is showing himself to be someone who you can't make a deal with and have that deal stick. And I think that's very costly for our country. I think ultimately it raises questions about how trusted we are going to be in financial markets. And that'll mean higher interest rates, higher borrowing costs, higher mortgage costs. I think it'll mean over time a weaker dollar, which means we'll have to pay more for everything that we import. And so I think at a time when we've never had more debt and we're never accumulating government debt so rapidly, to alienate the whole rest of the world that holds a substantial fraction of that debt is a very misguided strategy. If I were sitting in China, I would be cheering all of this on. I would be thinking that the president of the United States is taking what was a strong country with a strong economy and cutting it off from the rest of the world and building up its rate of accumulation of debt as rapidly as he could. And it'd be hard for me to imagine receiving a greater strategic gift.
What do you make of his threats toward Apple and other smartphone makers? 25% tariff if they don't make their smartphones in the United States. I mean, what would that mean for consumers?
I think consumers would much rather buy smartphones cheap than make them. I don't know many people who are looking for jobs assembling smartphones in a factory. And we're sitting with a large number of manufacturing jobs already open. So why we would want to move people from the jobs they have now to jobs making smartphones, I cannot imagine. And I can imagine that in an economy that's ever more about information, about interconnection, that jacking the price of smartphones way up is going to be a big burden on American families. So this seems to me almost completely misguided as economic policy.
I also want to ask you about the president's battle with Harvard. The tuition and fees from international students generate a large portion of a university's income, and Harvard has already lost billions in grants and funding. Do you imagine that the school is going to endure some financial hardship because of this? How much more pressure can it take?
I mean, a court has already reversed the president's decision, at least on a temporary basis. The finances are a blow to Harvard, but Harvard's a wealthy university and can manage that. What's much more serious is the blow that this is to our country as we alienate thousands of people whose dream was to come study in the United States at Harvard, as we send away the people who were going to be the next generation of entrepreneurs of our great companies, as we interfere with the ongoing research projects that are curing diseases like cancer and diabetes. That's what this is about. It's about showing whether we're a generous nation that is open to the world and proud of what people can learn here, or whether we're at war with the idea of learning and teaching students from all over the world. It's about whether the United States is going to be a moral beacon. That's my focus today, and I think that's the focus of most people at Harvard. Harvard is being used to send a message, and that message is a very, very dangerous one. Courage is contagious. Harvard has shown courage in using all the legal redress mechanisms open to it, and I'm glad they'll continue to do that.
Beyond the moral argument that you've made, there's also an economic one, and you sort of alluded to it. I'd like for you to expand on it. It's the entrepreneurial injection that these foreign students represent for the U.S. economy, right? There's a Stanford study that found that 44% of U.S. unicorn companies, those are startups valued at $1 billion or more, are actually founded or co-founded by immigrants. And specifically for Harvard, Axios found that around 24 of those companies were co-founded or founded by Harvard international students. So ultimately, what would this represent for the economy as a whole if you're excluding these brilliant students from attending U.S. universities?
This is going to make us poorer. It's going to make there be fewer high quality jobs. I don't know. I think most people would rather work at the next Google than work assembling an iPhone. And we're making a choice to become the kind of economy that assembles iPhones rather than being the kind of economy that invents iPhones. And that's a very costly mistake. It's a misguided judgment. And ultimately, it's going to be poorer. I speak to all kinds of American students. They think that part of what is great about coming to a university like Harvard is the way they meet the most talented young people from around the world. So I don't know who wants to have that opportunity denied to them. What a fantastic opportunity it was for us some years ago to be able to have Xi Jinping's daughter, brought up in that system, come and spend 4 years in our system. And what an opportunity that is to show the difference between our kind of society and theirs. And we're just throwing that all away.